Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 10 a.m. First, I'd like to recognize that we're doing business in Hookachesset and Tassat First Nations territories. And can we go around the room and introduce everyone, maybe starting with Jim?
Jim Warren, live out Beaver Creek, new member to the board. Thanks.
Gordon Blakey, Beaver Creek resident, of course, and have been with the water company for quite a while. Brad Jaskin, live out Beaver Creek and new member.
Mike Kovas, Beaver Creek Fire Department.
Keith Booker, Beaver Creek Water Department.
Hi, everybody. Eddie Kunderman, Operations Manager for the Regional District. And it's nice to see such a full room and some fresh faces in the crowd. Great.
James Burslem, new Operations Assistant with the ACRD. Matt Cloud, Water Utilities Lead Hand with ACRD.
Harold Carlson, member of the advisory committee.
Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Thank you. And online, Christy?
Well, Christy Arsenault, and a new member of the committee.
Thank you. And over here?
Good morning, Jenny Brown, General Manager of Community Services.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome. Okay, so we'll start off right now with an approval of the agenda. I need a motion to approve the agenda, or are there any additions? So can I get a
I was just gonna, not really an addition, but I just wanted to mention that we do have new members joining us today. And the reason I didn't have time to reach out to the existing committee members is that they were just appointed yesterday at the end of the board meeting. So we have 3 new members, Jim, Brad, and Christy. So just so everyone's informed.
Thank you. Okay, so can we get a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you, Brad. And a seconder? Thank you, Gord. And all in favor? Thank you. Any declarations for conflict of interest? Seeing none, we can move to the minutes. Can I get an approval for the Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee meeting held November 14th, 2024 minutes? Thank you. And seconded by Mike. Are you a voting?
You're not a voting member anymore.
So we need a seconder. That's okay. Thanks, Brad. And all in favor? Motion carried. Okay, so now we have an introduction for James Burslem, and okay, thank you.
Hi, everybody. So we're extremely happy to welcome James Burslem to the ACRD team. James started on January 20th. And I know it's a little bit uncustomary to have the entire water crew here. This won't be every meeting, but we wanted to introduce James to the committee, introduce him to local governments and the process of what goes on kind of behind the scenes, and then bring Keith out as well. So James started, like I mentioned, on January 20th. Yeah, it's been kind of thrown into the fire with colder than regular weather over the last little break. His last 2 Sunday evenings have been interrupted. But that's just kind of what you're signed up for here now. So James comes to us from Barrier near Kamloops. He worked in a private mining operation there. He has a wife and 2 young daughters who will be joining him in Port Alberni shortly. And I think he's excited to call Port Alberni home, to move and really integrate within the community. His wife has a position accepted, I believe, at West Coast General Hospital. So he's in it for the long haul. I think we're extremely, as the ACRD, we're extremely excited and grateful to have found James. When you're hiring, you really don't know what you're going to get. And you can do all your interviews and your background checks and whatnot, but you really don't know what you're going to get until you walk through the door. And we got exactly what we expected with James. He fits in awesome with the team. And we're proud to welcome him to the ACRD family. So please join me in welcoming James.
Yeah, thank you. Welcome. Okay, did you want to say anything, James? Sorry for putting you on the spot there. Okay, so then we can move on to the request for decision to do with the water service rate review. Did anyone want to speak to it? Or?
Yeah, I'll do a little bit of background. So typically what we do is there'll be a report and we'll do a little bit of a background and then toss it over to the committee's way. So this report in front of us is a proposed amendment to bylaw 1148, that -3, I believe we're on now, is a water rate increase. So we're looking to approve amendments to include a water rate increase for the Beaver Creek water system effective April 1st, 2025. The rates have not increased since 2021. So when we look at cost inflation since then, it's jumped quite a bit. But we didn't want to increase too much as we keep going. So what we're looking at right now, this is really just an increase to address the inflation over the past 4 years now already. So we're looking to increase the single family residential rate by $7.38 per quarter. And then those secondary services and commercial connections increased by $9.01 per quarter. Kind of why there's a difference between those two rates is the first primary connections get parcel taxed. The secondary connections, sorry, you don't get parcel tax on those. So having those secondary rates a little bit higher, it just kind of equalizes them amongst the two. So the rationale kind of between doing this, it's kind of to keep up. It's really important as a water system to be sustainable. We want to keep our water rates fresh. Its cost of operations continue to go up from our operations and maintenance budget. That's what drives the sustainability of the service. By being able to have lowest cost of operations as possible, we can put as much as we can into our capital reserves for the future to refresh the system so we don't have numerous breaks as we've had over the last little bit. So yeah, this additional revenue, we're looking to generate approximately, this change will generate approximately $30,000 a year of additional revenue. The additional cost per connections breaks down to about $29.52 or $36.04 per year. We do have some options considered within the report. We're also working on completing a long-term financial plan for the Beaver Creek water system. This will allow us to kind of do a detailed analysis of what we are currently putting away into our capital reserves and what we need to long-term for that long-term renewal of the system. So one of the options is to wait until we do that for the rate increase. This isn't recommended because then you'd see a large rate increase. I think this rate increase, keeping up with the cost of inflation, it makes sense. You do that, and then we'll do the analysis and bring back what we need to look at for future. As I move forward here, right, we just look at kind of why the importance of keeping these water rates up to date. We look at operational costs, right, the service quality, financial stability, future planning, and sustainability is all the things we're looking for. So I will just stop blubbering at that and throw it over for any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments? Yes, Brad.
Is it rate increase for all districts or just Beaver Creek?
Yeah, so Beaver Creek Water System is its own service, its own system. So it's a regional district, and this meeting we're just focused on Beaver Creek. So this rate increase will be for the residents of Beaver Creek, and I should note that I believe we have in here it'll be effective April 1st, 2025.
Go ahead, Gord.
I'm in full agreement to that. We come to a conclusion of that, I think, several years ago when we decided that little increases now and then are better than a huge increase. So I think it's a good move.
Thank you, Christy. Christy,
There we go. Yeah, got it there. Little button problem. I am a new board member, or committee member, so I'm, just coming into this blind. But I'd really, I agree with what we're saying is that small increases are important, but that was a really generic answer. And I'd like to know specifically what is increasing and is this just to put into capital reserves? What is this money for?
Thank you, through the chair. And that's an excellent question, Christy. I think when we look at inflation and how it affects everything in our day-to-day life. So we know since the rate has increased in 2021, the costs of goods and services needed to maintain and operate the service have only risen. And as we look what's happening in the world, they're likely going to continue to rise. So we're talking chemicals, energy, labor. Adjusting these rates helps us address these rising costs. It allows us to provide the service that the residents of Beaver Creek and the quality potable water the residents of Beaver Creek come to respect for now. And then what they also do, Christy, when we talk about capital reserves. So we have an operating budget. And so we always try to align our operating budget with expected revenues and make it and get to a place where we still have some to throw into the capital reserve to think about that long-term sustainability. So while these funds likely won't make a big change in the capital reserve, they will allow us to continue to look at that long-term sustainability.
Thank you. Christy, did you have any follow-up?
I just thinking, you know, as I'm new on the committee, I haven't seen any of the information that this is based on, and so until I actually get to see some of that information, more in depth, I have concerns. No response required, just putting that out there.
How would you like us to handle that? We meet 3 times a year, or this year, I think we're meeting 3 times.
Yeah.
Did you want us to put it off until you had a chance to gather more information, or how would you
Well,
like?
I think, you know, in the, I do want to know where this is coming from. I appreciate, as you said, that chemicals and those sort of things are coming up, but being that I haven't seen any of the facts on this, I haven't seen any of that stuff. I'm concerned. So.
Yeah, and I'll just want to weigh in another thing. It's really important. Like typically, water systems and a lot of the water systems raise the rates every single year, and this is necessary to keep up with inflation. These rates are really just to meet the increasing costs of doing business. When we look at it, and when we put together our financial plan for the system, we are as financially responsible and aware kind of what's going on within the system and the world as we can be. When we look towards our projected budget this year, just operating costs, we are down probably about $200,000 from the year before in operating costs. And that's being aware of the world we're in and the restraints and the difficulties that each of us face when we're trying to live. So we're very cognizant when we bring a rate increase, we're cognizant of how it hits the end user. That's why we recommend smaller increases. What we'll probably get to, and for new members, I think it's important when we look at long-term sustainability, and that's a word we'll kind of keep talking to you about, because we need to plan for the next 30 years. We need to make sure that we're putting enough money aside and we're raising rates appropriately to do that. When we create the long-term financial plan, it will be based off an updated asset management plan, which will look at the long-term renewal costs of the system and what each property needs to be putting away or should be paying annually to do that. When you look to bridge the gap is what we say, and we look at the small increases, it's likely that when we look at that long-term financial plan and what's currently being paid based off what should be paid long-term, we'd be looking at a larger increase. So by making these smaller increases, we decrease the shock value of that one large boom increase. And I know every dollar matters. We're also very cognizant of that and making sure the rate increase is at an amount we can afford. I think $30 a year, when we look at long-term ability to wake up in the morning and have a shower, to have a glass of water that we know we can trust, that somewhat pays for itself.
Thank you. Okay, does anyone else have any comments, or would anybody like to make the motion? I'm just worried that if we put it off, we'd miss a deadline, and I don't know. Is there a deadline, or would it have an impact? Like, our meetings aren't often enough to put it off.
The impact would be is we have our next meeting scheduled, and we called meeting listening to the committee, asking for a third meeting. So we called one for June. I think if we don't decide on this now, so the process is as an advisory committee, you recommend that the board of directors approves this. So we will then take the report to our next board meeting with the bylaw increase. If we don't do it now, we're looking at that April 1st kind of billing period. We'd likely lose a quarter, maybe 2 quarters, because our next meeting being June 19th, we likely wouldn't be able to get it onto the July 1st bill. So then we'd be missing half the year's increases. So those are kind of the risks.
Christy, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm back. I'd love to hear from the folks that have been on the committee from last year, being that you've been there before, what your thoughts are. I'm highly skeptical of things nowadays, and unfortunately that just means that, you know, even small increases, I want to have information to make these decisions for us to advise properly.
Okay, thank you, Harold. And then we can,
Yeah, unfortunately, I was unable to attend the last meeting in November. But I'm wondering, I see it was, rate increase was discussed then and it was not approved. Was that the same rates as what's being proposed today?
Yeah, and through the chair, I'll address that. I don't believe we did take at the November meeting, we didn't take a report to raise the rates. It was briefly discussed in one of our discussions, but we didn't actually bring a report for an increase.
Thank you.
thanks. Gord?
Well, what I've found over the years is people get really upset. We don't do anything to keep the rates within the inflation and things like that. And all of a sudden we hit them with a big one. And then it hurts way more than this is a pretty small increase here. You're going to notice it. It's at the end of the year for sure, but I feel it's necessary to keep the operation of our water system keeps going and looking after it properly.
Okay, and I think that is, Mike, you were, yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, just Christy, just to answer your question, I think some of the big discussions were last year was Susan brought up in the sense of that we don't pay enough for our water in the sense of, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's looking at how do we increase that to be able to get the best thing that we have. And to be honest with you, Beaver Creek does have the best water system in the regional aspect of things. And we're very fortunate enough to do what we do. And thank you to Eddie and the gang that's in there and being able to make sure that we're funded and not getting into debt with our water system. And I think, you know, just that small increase here right now would be, you know, just helps us that much more with that there. And having that increase of $30,000, I know it might seem a lot, but realistically it's not when you talk about our water. So.
Okay, thank you. And I think oh, go ahead.
How often does that increase happen? Or are you expected to happen?
So for this increase, this is a one-time, this is the increase. It will go into the bylaw. So this is what you will pay per quarter. I should also note, we used to, in the bylaw, it used to discuss things by the month. It just made it difficult for our financial team when we turned it, because we bill every quarter, to be like, we had roughly 172.82 is the amount of we pay per quarter. It's just this random amount. So we changed the language in the bylaw just to be by quarter, just to be consistent with what we actually do. So that will go in, that will be in perpetuity until it's again looked at and addressed. Like I said, we haven't raised the rates since 2022. Likely what we should be doing, but it's again is coming back with smaller every single year and doing that review every single year. And we put it in our calendars for fall of every year to bring something and to talk about this rates in November at our last meeting of the year for the next year. Say, okay, well, how are our rates? What's the financial system looking like? What's our capital budget looking like? What's our projected year-end actuals looking like? And we can have that discussion there to set it up for the next year. So this one increase is for this year. Again, we need to keep up with the cost of inflation. We need to look at the long-term sustainability and renewal costs of the system. And that's where we'll be doing that long-term financial plan and capital replacement plan to bring it to the committee to make sure that you have all the numbers to be as well informed as you can to make the decisions for the members of Beaver Creek.
Thank you. Jim?
So is the bulk water agreement that we have with the city part of this dollar amount that you worked out?
Yeah, so the bulk water agreement with the city of Port Alberni, it's part of our annual operating expenses. So when we create our operating budget, we budget like, okay, this is how much we're forecasting to pay in bulk water. So yes, it's a part of this. But I think when you look at the large budget and whether the costs of the bulk water agreement are in there or not, those costs are going to be replicated in another way, whether it's increased costs of goods, right? So, but yes, they are.
Okay, any other questions? Oh, Harold?
Question I have, do we know what the increase the city is gonna be proposing for supply of the bulk water?
Go ahead. I didn't even know we had an agreement still.
Yes, and through the chair, and that's an excellent question. I mean, this is one of the projects that's also, there's a lot of things going on right now. So when we look at where we're at with the bulk water agreement, the city has given notice for new members that the bulk water agreement will expire. They gave their notice due to the contract. It expires December 31st of this year. So we are looking at what we can do to bridge the gap as a kind of a short-term extension on that bulk water agreement while we do our homework on what's the best means for Beaver Creek Water System to move forward. So the city of Port Alberni is undertaking a bunch of master plans. Water and utilities is one of those master plans. So we're kind of waiting, communicating we want to work with them as they develop this master plan. But we're waiting for that report until we can drive. So what are we going to do for a temporary extension for our bulk water agreement? Because we understand that regardless of the path we move forward on, we're not going to be ready to go for January 1st, 2026.
Thank you, Heather.
Sorry, I just wanted to acknowledge that Pam Craig is in the meeting. She wasn't showing up before. Pam, are you there?
Yes, but I don't know if you can see me or hear me.
We can hear you. We can't see you.
Okay, I'm here. Thank you.
Pam, would you like, or are you up to speed? We're talking about a rate increase. Would you like to chime in or?
I am listening. I've heard the comments and I really appreciate the explanations and the understanding. I am a strong supporter that we must pay for our water correctly. And I understand that this is for this year and I will defend this raise. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I am interested. I have one question. It's kind of an aside, but I understand that, and this is because at the current time we're using the bulk water agreement with the city of Port Alberni. Under the 4321 water treatment policy, is it true that the city of Port Alberni has a deferral to be in compliance? And it has to do with them supplying or using a surface water source, and usually it requires filtration? Jenny?
Great question. I can speak a little bit to that. So my understanding, and again, it's always good to hear it from the horse's mouth from the city, but my understanding through the history with the city is their water system meets 4321 most of the time, but it doesn't always. And so that's during the spring freshet when they have high turbidity, and then they'll switch over to the Bainbridge water source. And at that time, and it really depends on the length of time that happens, they are not necessarily meeting 4321. I should actually ask the city for an update because this is fairly old information. But they do have adequate treatment that does meet and exceed the drinking water guidelines. The reason there's concerns about surface water is mostly due to cryptosporidium and giardia. And so the water source, what's the name of the creek? China Creek. The China Creek water source is exceptional. And so that is a wonderful water source, and adding chlorine to that and treatment, like it is, I have no concerns from that from a quality perspective. The challenge with Bainbridge Lake is that it is very high in tannins and lignans. And so when you've got a lot of organics in a water system and then you add chlorine, it has a chance to create disinfection byproducts. And disinfection byproducts at high levels over long periods of time have been linked to cancer in mice. And so that is one of the biggest concerns. So that is when I look at the city's water system and I think about water quality and what I'd be concerned about, I like to sort of present the whole picture. Otherwise, and again, it is for a very short period of time that we are drawing from a water source that has high organics. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, so the organics, would that be the THMs? Is that? Okay, and also the cryptosporidium and giardia, chlorine doesn't kill it, but does the other method that they use to disinfect, does that kill it?
So basically the problem is with the cysts that can be created with giardia and cryptosporidium, and you actually can treat it with chlorine. It's just concentration and time. And with enough concentration and time, you can kill anything. But if you're, so the UV disinfection, what it does instead is it treats in a different method. So it actually penetrates through the outside, basically the egg. I think of them as eggs, right? With a hard outer shell. And chlorine just takes a lot longer to dissolve that to then destroy the organism versus UV is able to just like send itself right through there. And what it does is it sterilizes the organism. So it's like a lot of it is you can test to see how effective your treatment methods are. And yeah, again, I personally have no concerns whatsoever with the water quality that the city has.
Okay, thank you. So. Would anybody like to make a motion or? Gord?
This is on the water increase rate, increase of water rates. I would make a motion that we proceed with the recommendation of the staff for the increase in our quarterly water rates.
Do I have a seconder? 2 seconders? Okay, thank you. And we'll take it to a vote. All in favor? And Christy, I can't see you there. Or Pam. Oh, can you say your votes, Pam and Christy?
Yes, I'm in favor. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
I'm in favor.
Thank you. So motion carried. Thank you, everyone. That was a good discussion. And Brad, did you want to say something more? Okay. Oh, okay. Okay, so we can move forward to reports. Did anybody want to speak to anything?
I'll go through. So again, typically how we do it is we'll have the request for decisions, and those are the ones we make the recommendation and vote on, and then we just have reports. And this is somewhat just to keep the members of the committee up to speed on what's going on and anything pertinent. So the first report we have here is just a verbal report. I have nothing, you'll see nothing within your packets about it. At the November Beaver Creek Water Advisory Committee meeting, the committee expressed interest in creating a frequently asked questions section on our website. And I just printed these off. I should have handed these out beforehand, so I apologize, but I'll just, Matt, if you could just hand these around. We've just, where we're going with this is to create this on our website, to have an FAQ question where residents, users of the system can go on and have their questions answered. These will be questions that we regularly receive. And then we can, it kind of cuts out the middleman, less phone calls, everybody's a little bit more informed. So we've been looking at various forms of municipal water systems and some of the FAQs that they have on their websites. I've just provided 2 here. This one of the city of Port Alberni, and then one with the city of Campbell River. And I really just would like some discussion from the committee on which format you would prefer us moving forward to. I think when we look, when I look personally at the city of Campbell River, I really like the format. It's really clean, it's crisp. It has that professional look to the website, and that's somewhat the format I think that Jenny, I don't think you have one, but I think you're well versed with the city of Campbell River. I think this is the format that I would like to move forward with. So what we'll do in probably in Q2, Q3, depending on the rest of the projects, is spend a lot of the detailed work on putting this FAQ together, getting it up on the website and making it look crisp for the users of the system. So just some feedback and wanted to get some comments from you as a committee.
Okay, do we have any comments? I know I like the one from the Campbell River one. Easy to follow.
And I
Okay.
apologize for not getting this information out in the agenda. It was, when I set this, I wasn't expecting that we'd have all the new members be present for this meeting. So in the future, most items will be available in your agenda package.
I'm just wondering, this is just something because of what happened in the past few days with the water main break. I had to look up the phone number, the emergency contact number, and then I had to remember it and put it into my phone. Is there a way to connect it so that it would automatically upload to, when you're using your phone? I guess that's an IT thing, but. Oh, sure, Mike.
Somehow,
Oh, that's a good idea.
We've used Voyant Alert in the past for Bamfield when there's been some serious water main breaks and there's been a boil water advisory. So yeah, that's a tool that can be used.
Absolutely, and it's a good tool. I think when we use Voyant Alert, we've done it when we've had water advisories, and we're expecting water to be out for upwards of 5 to 7 days. We know with our crew, it's going to be a matter of 6 to 8 hours. So we've really found that the effort, by the time we get the Voyant Alert out there, we're probably almost going to have the repair fixed. So we have been using social media just to kind of get that quick information out. Again, on a Sunday night, it's where we've had our last two, we do best we can to get the information out in the best manner. And I know word of mouth usually spreads pretty quickly and it gets up on Facebook and everybody knows it. So.
Okay. Now, as far as, sorry, I took us on a different road there, but as far as between what the city of Port Alberni and Campbell River offer on their websites, I like how Campbell River presents it, but I also like the way the questions are answered by the city of Port Alberni, nice and clean and simple. Just because when you go into something like this, you don't want to read a lot. You just want everything concise. Did anybody else have comments?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jim.
I agree with you about the emergency phone number. I know the water main broke right in front of my house and I tried to phone, couldn't find a number anywhere, ended up phoning non-emergency number for the RCMP. And he said, well, I'll find out for you and I'll get right back to you. He phoned me back just as Matt was arriving at my house and said, hey, sorry, I wasn't able to find anybody. So I don't know what to say. And I said, don't worry about it. We've already got them here. But yeah, it would be a lot easier if that number was on the website really clearly, because it was hard to find. My wife ended up finding it and giving it to me, but it was difficult.
Yeah, the RCP actually, the not emergency line did leave me a voicemail. But yeah, by the time I noticed there was a main break on SCADA when I was on call that night, phone Keith, phone James. By the time I was halfway out driving by the mill, I was probably getting 15 calls from different people. So I ended up getting a voicemail from them and they left me a message. So that's probably why they didn't get through. But yeah.
But thank you though, Jim, and through the chair. I think that's really good information. That's the feedback we want to hear. If you as residents are having issues finding the number, then we need to do a better job of presenting the number. So we'll take that back and look at where it is and make it better and easier to find for you all.
Any other comments about the website display for frequently asked questions? Gord?
No, I think I'd be in favor of the Campbell River one also. It's, they lay it out so it's quick and easy to read. That's the big thing.
Mike?
Just a question there, Eddie, with the city one there, when it's got all the web numbers and everything else that's on there, is that what you would find if you're looking at the Campbell River when a water pressure, you'd have that links to whatever would be below, or is that?
Yeah, so each question within the Campbell River one, you expand it and you receive the answer. And we'd make sure, like similar, it's been mentioned by the chair and the rest of the committee, is have the information concise, to the point, bullet form, easy, quick to read, get your answer.
Perfect. Yeah, I like that. Thanks.
Okay. Do you want to move on? So we can go to the leak detection report.
Yeah, so this is we were a little background. So when we have a leak in the system, we lose water. And what we call that is somewhat typically it's unaccounted for water loss. we want to do everything we can as a water system in order to be as financially responsible as possible to account for every drop of water. So when we lose water, that means we're not billing for water, we're losing revenue. It costs money to make water, right? So the cost of products, cost of chlorine, cost of staff time, cost of our bulk water agreement. Every cubic meter we lose is a cubic meter we don't get billed back and doesn't get put into the system. So our goal every year is to reduce our unaccounted for water loss. And within our annual water report, you'll see our goal is to have 15%, which is somewhat industry standards, best practices for unaccounted for water loss. So Matt and the team and Keith and Jenny have done an amazing job of reducing our unaccounted for water loss. And again, I didn't prepare exact specifics. We were at 18% last year. In 2 years previously to that, we were at 27%. So it's a big difference. We are more cognizant of how much water we're using flushing, how much water the fire department, and thanks to Mike and his team for documenting hydrant usage. This is all ways that we can increase financial sustainability of the system. So we brought in, and it was determined as part of our 2024 work plan to bring in a leak detection company to kind of do a quick audit of some of our larger mains in the system, some of our services, to kind of see, hey, are there any hidden leaks that we can't see? Because sometimes a line will be leaking and we don't see it until it presents itself. It could be a small leak, could be a service line leak that we just don't see. So we worked with Pacific Leak Locators. They're a company out of Victoria. And they came to Beaver Creek system November 28th and 29th and used their equipment to do leak detection. I won't get into their equipment because frankly, I don't know all the ins and outs of their equipment. So what they surveyed is 8.1 kilometers of water main, primarily on Beaver Creek Road and Gordon Avenue. In that report and in those findings, we found 3 service line leaks and 1 significant hydrant leak, all of which were repaired. So right there, again, we're reducing that unaccounted for water loss by repairing leaks in the system. Oh, I do have my numbers here. So it's in the report. So 27% in 2021. This is, again, one of those ongoing efforts. We talk about the cost of unaccounted for water loss in 2023. We're at $45,000. It's kind of that ballpark value of what we lost in water. But that was down from $60,000 in 2022. So again, we talk about sustainability and the annual renewals of lines or water main. Like this year, we're replacing Lower Kitsaxis. Last year, we replaced a section of Smith Road. Those efforts are also bring down unaccounted for water loss, right? New lines, less likely to break. Fantastic. The cost of the survey, it was roughly $8,000 or $7,900 for them to come out, travel time to do the survey. While they were here, we actually also got them to go up. We operate a system in Millstream in near Plulet. So they went up there as well on Millstream's cost, don't worry, and did a quick leak detection there. And we found a very significant leak that we had been chasing for a year. So there's a lot of value in doing this leak detection and having the equipment to do the leak detection. It took them about 15 hours to complete the service on site with the guys, and very good crew. One of their guys is a water operator out of Victoria, of the Capital Regional District, and very knowledgeable. It was a really good experience, I think, Matt, working with them. So this is kind of just an update on that process of why we did it, why there's value in doing the leak detection within the system. And yeah.
So it's not one of those sticks?
Pretty close. Just a high-tech stick. It uses like all listening, right? So you put a puck here, right? And you put a puck in another line and you measure and you close valves and measure the flow of water and determine, and I'm not going to get into it because that's not my area of expertise and I'll misspeak, but that's the gist.
Thank you. Did anyone have any questions?
Yeah, it just seems like a very inexpensive thing to bring in and test for the long term.
I think when we look and we talk about long term, it's kind of one of those flags. It's like at some point we'll have the conversation of, is it worth it for us as a water system rather than bringing people in to do the work? Do we purchase equipment and have it on site and do the work ourselves? Like I said, it's cost $8,000 for this survey, 15 hours of time. It's likely something, if we look at investing eventually in the equipment, we can have it on hand. And if we suspect, we can check. If we suspect, we can check and we'll know right away. Bang, bang. We don't have to organize a report, move people, mobilize, etc. So it's one of those items to think for future.
Okay. Well, thank you for that report. And were there any more questions or comments, Mike?
Just Eddie, is there a cost on that equipment? Like, do you have a rough cost of something like that?
I have, and through the chair, and thanks for that question, Mike, I have a high level cost that I believe it was approximately in the $20,000 range. Again, you'd have to look in, and there's various suites of equipment you can get and what you need depending on what type of line you have, the size, et cetera. But that's kind of a high level ballpark of what we'd be looking at. I think that's what they communicated theirs was.
So just in itself, just with that rate increase we've just done, that could offset that cost or something like that, right?
Thanks. Brad?
Is there any amount of training to go with the system, or you've seen it firsthand, right, Matt?
Yeah, so there's so many different options of different equipment. There would definitely be some training required to make sure that we're using the equipment the right way and using it to the best of its abilities. Because with specific leak locators, they have like vans full of different types of equipment. So if you can't physically locate exactly where it was, they can actually use some of this other higher end equipment, which is very, very expensive, probably something we wouldn't get with a smaller system. But this is something that will really help us, like in that 20 to 25 grand range.
And do you think you guys could use it with the staff you have, or would you need to bring in more staff?
We could use it with the staff that we have, and we'd be able to share it across other service areas in the regional district as well.
And I think that's the key point. It's right. It's like when we purchase equipment such as this, we're looking at economies of scale. Which it's not just something that we would use and pay for out of Beaver Creek. It's something we could spread amongst Banfield, Millstream, and potentially look at partnerships and seeing what district equivalent to Fino within the regional district uses as well.
Excellent. Okay. Are we all good to move to the next quarter at a glance?
Yeah, so thank you. I'll speak to this one as well. So again, it's listening to what the Water Advisory Committee has asked of us and making sure that you have the information that you need to present to the members of Beaver Creek when you have your conversations, your town hall meetings. So what we're going to be doing is, this is the first iteration of next quarter at a glance. Really just giving you the ins and outs of what we're going to be doing as a water system in the next few months. So when Bob out there asks you, hey, what's going on in the water system? Where's my money going? You can say, well, this is what they're doing. They're doing analyzer maintenance this week. They're doing disinfection and chlorine boosting. I think probably some dead end flushing, but you'll at least know kind of a little bit more informed of what's going on, where the guys are. They're not just running around sitting on a shovel. We don't do that.
We don't see that very often.
No, definitely not. So
Never.
when we look at our next quarter, we're doing regular PM preventative maintenance activities. And Matt's developed a very good methodical PM program. So with water system maintenance, we want to be preventative rather than reactive. We don't want to maintain a system after it breaks. We don't want to be chasing leaks. We don't want to be doing Super Bowl night out there, freezing weather, falling trees, having equipment stuck in snow, right? We don't want to be doing that. We want to be fixing it so we don't have these bigger leaks. So some of those preventative maintenance activities that will be coming up in the next quarter. Again, I recommend analyzer maintenance, disinfection, CL2 boosting, pump house maintenance and pump maintenance, making sure the pumps are running efficiently. Reservoir inspections, making sure the reservoirs aren't leaking, they aren't cracked. Dead end flushing, again, moving that stagnant water through the system so you don't have the buildup of sediments. Fire hydrant inspections, water meter reads. So every quarter we have to read the water meters and that informs the information for billing. Of course, there's building safety inspections and servicing backup generators. Bigger projects that will be on the go the next quarter will be undertaking the Cassuxis water main replacement project. So this is replacing 760 meters of AC water main, including an underground railway crossing there. So it's a little bit more of an intricate replacement. And I just want to, again, for new members, a little bit more information here. This project, again, we have developed a strategy in the Beaver Creek water system of putting new tenders out late in December, early January, to allow for best pricing we really found. construction companies and we work on a tender process. So we receive bids on the work. Here's the work, we give it out, you give us your bids. We usually, we rate the bid based on cost primarily, but there's other factors involved. We've found and really been successful with putting the costs out, the projects out early, that the pricing we've received back has come in under budget. Because it allows the construction company to plan their year out and to fit the work into their windows that works best for maintaining work for their employees. Because they have employees, they want to keep work. January, February, March, April, sometimes there's less work to do for water main replacements for some of these construction companies. So we put it out early, and we've seen huge benefits in coming in under budget. This one was no different. We had budgeted $760,000 in our financial plan the previous year. I think it was 760, and again, the number may be a bit off. But as we went through the design project, so we always have to design the replacement before we put it out to tender. As we went through the design and the railway crossing costs came in, we were expecting it to come in well above that. And we were going to have to bring a financial plan amendment to the board. Luckily enough, this strategy allowed us to come in under budget by a significant amount of what we were expecting as we went through the design. So that's just some of those benefits of the strategy and where we were thinking about in our long-term sustainability of the system. We are always thinking ahead and working to provide the best value for the residents of Beaver Creek. So this Consubstance Water Main project, it was awarded to Bowerman Construction Limited. We have good history with them, working with their crews. So that project will start in the next month or so, probably run a couple months. I think they gave 3 months from when notice to proceed to finish is 180 days. So 3 months from start to finish. Also, we're currently wrapping up or going through the financial plan, I say wrapping up, but on staff's end, and now we get to pass it out to you. Looking at the financial plan, so we've created our draft work plan, which includes all our work report and items that we see upcoming for the next year. So some of these items include around our Beaver Creek water service yard. We have some trees that are a little bit, we call them danger trees, right? So we're looking at strategically removing some danger trees around the yard. We're looking at a conceptual design for the replacement of the North Reservoir. It was flagged last year that the North Reservoir would need to be replaced in the next 5 to 8 years. So we want to make sure that we're, again, being preventative rather than reactive. We're ready when that date comes, and we're doing our conceptual design. I'm gonna have to take a drink. With the height of the North Reservoir, we need it. The height determines the pressure. It pushes the water out throughout the system, right? It is an older style water reservoir. They don't make them. So in our conversations with the designers of fiberglass tanks, they don't make the same type tanks. They don't make the same height as that one. So, oh crap, what do we do then? What, we're gonna have to look at a pump house to pump the water? No. So we're looking at a conceptual design to potentially put the reservoir up on a concrete pad. And then, so it'll be like 8 feet of concrete. Then the reservoir on top of that, you get the height, which allows you to get the pressure to push the water through the system, which will save us a lot of money down the road in pump house maintenance, building a pump house, having the guys go out and maintain the pump house, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's a conceptual design. From there, we'll go to a more detailed design. Like, okay, we have the concept. Excellent. Now, how the heck are we going to do this? Move the reservoir, build a new one while maintaining the water. So we enlist engineers because I'm not near smart enough to do that. So we enlist engineers that help us out with that. They have the time, the patience, and the expertise to come up with that detailed design. When we have the detailed design, that allows us to make grant applications. Every grant application, you can't just say, we want the money to do this. They'll be like, okay, what's this? Give us the plans. We need the detailed design. We need the paper ready, shovel ready project. So at that point, once we have that, we can highlight the grants that come up. We're forecasting this project, likely it'll be $800,000+, and this is in 2023 dollars. So who knows when we get there. We want to utilize grant funding as best we can to make everything as cost effective as we can. Background, that's the North Reservoir replacement. We talked about it a bit last year, but it will be something we will continue to talk about through this year and into next year. The plans, the replacement, and ensuring that we keep the system running as best we can through that. And there will be times, I'm sure, where it will be a challenge. Matt will be pulling his hair out. But that's what we do. We were looking as well. We're talking about some of the things that are coming up this year. Meter reading equipment, our meter reading equipment. So what we use to read the meters to inform our billing, it's reached end of life. We've been putting this off. It's one of those things, okay, it's time to replace the meter reading equipment. So we budgeted about $50,000 for this replacement of equipment. Got the cost estimates back. It's not looking like it's going to be even near that. Fantastic. Always good news to hear, but you want to budget high, deliver lower. In the meantime, we've also put in a grant application for this work. So again, this is an opportunity with our grant coordinator and our team. We try to do our best to highlight grants that will work for the work we have coming up. So we've put in a grant application that will completely cover the cost, the installation, the procurement, the design of changing the meters reading equipment. So any meter that's older than 10 years within this grant application will be swapped out with a new meter. Any meter that's less than 10 years will have the endpoint technology, which is what we use to read to give us the data to upload to our software to generate the bills to get our revenues. So that will all be covered under this grant application. We have our fingers crossed. I think all in all, it's a $2.5 million grant application we put forth to the BC government. So we're hoping to hear from that in the next little bit. Fingers crossed. Again, and then the next little bit, we'll be preparing the annual report. Every year, our team here, we prepare an annual report on the operations of the system in the previous year. Covers everything through analysis of our chemical makeup of the water. All the checks we do through Island Health, we always get our water checked to make sure that we are providing safe water to the residents. And if there's anything within the water, when we submit it to Island Health for testing, we hear back right away. And we never hear back because the water we deliver is always of the highest quality. So it's just in regards to some of our conversations earlier, I don't want there to be any worry about the quality of water. It's tested and checked regularly, and we would not, and there are so many checks and balances to make sure that the water you're drinking is safe and not producing some of these issues that we hear happening. So we're preparing the annual report. We're working to kind of downsize the annual report. It's a lot of rhetoric. It's a 30-page document. We're trying to bring it down to 2. Here are the points. Here's what the people need to know. Here's what Island Health needs to know. Here's the data in an image rather than blah, 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 blah. Right? So we're working to kind of downsize that, and we're hoping to have that finished and presented to you in the June meeting. Matt, thank you for your efforts in putting this report together for next quarter glance. You'll see this kind of at every one of our next meetings.
Thank you very much. Pam, did you like to speak to this?
Did you address me?
Pardon me? Pam, yes.
Yes, thank you. I just love listening to Eddie's reports. They're fantastic. So just a quick back to the testing leak, Eddie. Is there more testing to go through, more areas that need to be looked at? And I agree with purchasing the equipment. So I'd like to hear your answer.
And thank you, Pam. And I'll try not to talk quite as much moving forward. Typically, I don't. I just like to give the background because we have so many new members who are just literally got word yesterday and today. So
I appreciate it.
Thank you. And through the chair, yes, there are more lines. We have 40+ kilometer of water main in Beaver Creek. We tested 8 kilometers in this study. So in theory, that's not talking about service lines that branch off and everything else within the system. So Siri's trying to hear me. So yes, there definitely is. It wouldn't be something where we would always be doing it. We'd want to suspect there was something before we went out and used our staff time. Staff time, the time of James, the time of Keith is very valuable to us. So we always try to, and Matt, again, I'll sing your praises. He does a good job of assigning the time appropriately throughout the system where it needs to be. So we wouldn't just be running out there playing leak detection all the time. But we would definitely use it strategically to limit the amount of unaccounted for water loss.
Thank you. Excellent planning. Thank you very much.
I have one quick question. We have a town hall meeting on March the 2nd, and I'm hoping, can I get this document on something I can share with everyone at the meeting?
Yeah, and we can take some staff time to put that together. I don't think, and Heather, correct me if I'm wrong, that we need to do much changes. We can probably, this is all shareable material, so you can actually take this report as you have it and print it and use it.
Okay, thank you. I wrote on mine.
I can print you copies.
Thanks. And did anyone, yeah, go ahead, Gord.
Couple questions. One most important, how tall of a reservoir do they make now? You mentioned raising up 8 feet of concrete. Well, that thing that's out there is 80 feet high.
They don't make them 80 feet high through the chair. And again, I will get, this is information I will get, and it'll be a part of our conceptual design. When we bring this, it'll bring forth the limitations of the current tank height, what currently is the industry standard. Yeah, they don't make them that high. I don't know the exact limit they make them on, but again, whenever you're getting anything custom designed, your costs are going through the roof.
The other question I would have is with the water meter and software going to be replaced after that. I recall some time ago, and Matt probably remembers him and I talking about it, is there was a bunch of meters that ended up having to be replaced or because they were defective. And from what I gather, when they were installed, the serial numbers of those meters were not attached to the specific address. So those guys had a lot of looking to do. So is that a possibility that when you're doing something like that, that can be in case there is a defective batch of meters? Something to consider?
Yeah, then thank you. And through the chair, wonderful point, wonderful question. It's all part of the project. It's a chance for us to completely retrofit our water meter system as we need to. Meters have a shelf life, and as everything does, they'll start to be defective at a certain point, some sooner than others for any what reason. Water system asset management and data recovery is one of those things that historically isn't where we want it to be moving forward. And it was a big project of our GIS and asset management team last year, working tirelessly with Matt on a condition assessment of all our infrastructure within the system. So we have it all on a map and it's all as accurate as possible. A lot of the meter information we're finding, and as we were putting in our water meter replacement application, is finding how old are these meters? Well, we don't have that data because the data wasn't recorded in 2001 the same way as it is now. So it's always forward thinking and being better and using the grant funding to fix what we have in the system moving forward. So the ultimate goal is we have all this system, all this information in the system. We can pull up, Matt can be out in the field with his laptop or his tablet and be like, okay, I know where everything is. I know the age of it. I know all my infrastructure in this area. So as part of that project, we're currently working on the ability to have field mapping done. So Matt can be out in the field. He can do a condition assessment on a line, upload it right there, bam. You don't have to come back to the office, load up your computer, because these guys hate paperwork. We want to get it, we want to get them doing it right away, right out in the field. Make it as easy as possible to have the information as readily as possible to everybody.
Okay, Pam, did you have another question? Yeah, I see your
No,
hand.
I'm good. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Take my hand down. Sorry.
Anyone else have any more questions? Okay, should we move to the alternate water source supply study? My favorite thing.
Okay. Yes, and we saved the best for last. Alternate or alternative water supply study. It's one of those ones, and this is more caveat than anything that's kind of bothered me. I like the alternate water source, alternative, alternate. It's kind of the word it's been thrown around in this one. So, I think it was approved by the board in September of 2023, was looking at our water source, looking at alternative water source in the study to assess the capital costs and the operating costs of reestablishing a primary water source within Beaver Creek and the cost of treating and building a water treatment plant for that source. So we have enlisted McElhaney Engineering. We enlisted them in late 2024, Q3 2024, to work on this project. The project is kind of in three parts, I guess. So a surface water study and a groundwater study to look at which sources could supply the amount of water that the system will need, and B, at a cost-effective manner. So we looked at groundwater. First of all, I did a large groundwater report. Luckily, we had some of this information already, so they could pull off. But engineers looking at groundwater, there were no groundwater surfaces other than building like 20 to 70 wells, 20 to 50 wells, I think it's in the report. It would take to provide the amount of water to support the system and the amount of flow within the system. So that's somewhat a non-starter looking at groundwater. So then looking at surface water. So two primary sources were identified and looked at. A was the Sproat Lake, and B was reintroducing the Stamp River. Sproat Lake, I think where the issues were with Sproat was the huge capital costs of getting the water from Sproat Lake to Beaver Creek. I mean, obviously, right? So that was kind of, those costs really limited that option. So again, it was looking again at a high level. So these studies were feasibility studies. Looking at the Stamp River and reintroducing, that was found as kind of recommended for further investigation as the primary water source. So where we'd like to go from there is to move forward now with a detailed assessment of the water treatment and what water treatment would be necessary and the capital costs and ongoing operating costs for treating our own water. So that are the next steps. So we'll take these draft reports, we'll give them the okay, they'll be good, and then we'll move forward with that study. We're looking to get that study back probably May, I'm hoping, and that the deadline will be to have it ready for the June meeting. And that's a reason why we have that meeting. Another one is to make sure that we have that study to present you. These are the costs of what it would take for the residents of Beaver Creek to fund and treat their own water. As a part of that, again, this is a feasibility study. So once we do that study, if it's determined to move forward, we will have to look somewhat at a more detailed look at the Stamp River and really kind of assess what drought concerns we may have with moving to that as the primary source, because this didn't really take drought into account. It was the high level feasibility. And then it was somewhat highlighted as well through some discussions with our sustainability planning department that talking about the Stamp River and the absolute minimum flow to maintain adequate water temperatures for fish habitat. And this is, so based on the available hydrometric data, the issue could be where the Stamp River fell below the minimum flow of 15 cubic meters per second for 6 days of data in October of 2002. So when this happened and the increased likelihood that this could happen due to drought conditions in the region, the provincial government has the ability to pull your water license based on fish habitat. So it's just one of those things that we'll need to do more study on once we move through the next step. Something I just wanted to highlight that it comes into the conversation. Don't ask me to get into too many details on that because high level information.
Okay, first we'll have Brad and then Christy. One
Well,
sec.
just a comment really, but the Stamp River should never fall below a certain level as long as you maintain the dams. You got LC Lake Dam draining in, you got Great Central Lake Dam draining in. As long as it's planned ahead of time and held the water back, it should never be a problem, in my opinion.
Okay, Christy.
Just a quick question. Why was Great Central not put forward as one of the options to look at?
I think again, when we're looking at the cost of the capital cost of getting the water from Great Central to Beaver Creek, it was determined as it was a non-starter, and I'm not sure if it's spoken to in the memo at all about that. But Jenny, do you have any more background on Great Central either?
Carol?
I have read through the summary there of the preliminary engineering report. And I'd like to make some comments of my experience. In the report, they seem to suggest that True Creek was the culprit for the turbidity that sometimes occurs during the high water flows, wet season. I'd like to counter that with my experience of working on the trails, build layout and constructing the Anglers Trail, which runs right through the Stamp Falls Provincial Park, as well as trails downstream on the opposite side. In the what really we noticed in the winter season when it was heavy rainfall and that, there were occasions there in Stamp Falls Provincial Park where, because of right from the Stamp Falls itself, the actual falls within the park, just after where the campsite is, from there upstream, there are numerous clay banks, the green clay in that. And that's where the turbidity source is. Because there were days when we were working there, it was like, and gosh, I can still recall one day, and this was upstream of Shannon's farm. The south bank was sloughing into the river there. And it was like the junction of the Thompson and the Fraser River. The south half side was totally turbid, and the northward. Now, I know from my experience when I was on the water board, the Beaver Creek water board back in the early 90s and whatnot, that turbidity was always a problem. When we had the pump station at that location, I had to be backflush regular to get rid of the sediment that was picking up, even though it was a buried intake, under a gravel bed. So, yeah, the turbidity source is a concern with that portion of the Stamp River. Now, I also know that people for decades have been suggesting way back then that Great Central Lake would be the best source of water. Now you have a conflict there. The dam on Great Central Lake is under the catalyst control, but they're governed by what fisheries are dictating for maintaining temperature in the Stamp River. And with climate change, it's become more and more difficult because I do recall there was a period, it was actually a trial where the curtains were draped across Great Central Lake, just upstream of the dam, the community there, so that colder water would be spilled down the Stamp River. So, there's a lot of conflict there, but that trial was successful. So an intake on the out of Great Central Lake at a lower elevation would make sense. But that's not something that the Beaver Creek electoral district could support. It would have to be a regional community thing. When you think of it, the Greater Victoria area and the Vancouver urban area, they both operate on a common regional domestic water supply. They're not the individual electoral areas. It's a combined effort. It's just a little comments on one to me.
Thank you, Harold. Gord?
A little bit with what Harold's saying there. Also, I have witnessed Truman Creek turning black when we did the last major out there in 2009 or 2011, whatever it was, the major control and everything on pump house. It was December and it started pouring rain and Truman Creek went black and it all comes down there, and where the intake is not good. That's got to be done. But back to Great Central Lake, I made a suggestion several years ago when Timber West put the old railway grade up for sale, that to a person that this regional district, that maybe the government you guys should go after the government to give Timber West some timber somewhere else to get that as a recreational trade, the old railway grade as a recreational trail, And if we ever got things together in Port Alberni, there'd be one big water main from there, service Cherry Creek, Beaver Creek, Summit Sprout Lake, the city of Port Alberni, and we wouldn't be pumping. Very few pump stations would be around at that point in time, but we didn't do that. While I've got the mic here, one thing, Ed, is that I think would be very important for us is if we could have some kind of an idea of what our bulk rate with the city is going to go to when we have some figures on the whole project there.
Yeah, for sure. And thank you for the knowledge and the points. I think it's all fantastic. It's hard to say exactly what that would be. I think when we're looking at a high level increase of what the bulk water rate could be, I think it was anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 annual increase to our rates is what we'd be looking at, based off of getting where the water rate is now to where the city would want it to be.
Well, is that because they got to install a bunch more equipment, or that's a pretty big increase, 60 grand a year?
I believe it. Go ahead, Jenny.
Yeah, actually, we just met with city staff to try and get an update on that, but unfortunately, they're still right now in a bit of limbo, and so we don't have a fulsome amount of information to provide because we're very curious about that too and where they're at on those steps. The letter that was proposed, and so where we're at right now, based on discussions, is basically they have ended our 2-year agreement. But at the time when they ended it, they said that they would be willing to extend if we just went to the existing residential rate. And that's what the difference is, which is $40,000 to $60,000, depending on our consumption. It's a 5% increase for us. So there's a cost to that. As we see that bulk water rate coming to an end this year, and knowing that it will take time no matter what we're doing. So we will, as Eddie had mentioned, have to come up with an interim agreement. So we're hoping to have something before the next meeting to bring to you to talk about that and see what does that look like. The discussion was really productive at a staff level where we said for them, the same as for us, they need to be establishing a financially sustainable system. So they need to be making sure that the water rates that they set for their residents, for us, for everyone, is generating enough revenue to cover their operational costs plus their renewal of all of their capital infrastructure. So they need to undertake a water master plan and do that financial analysis. That will not be done in time for they're doing a lot of master plans at the time. So we'll still be in limbo and talking about what would an interim agreement look like. So that is a whole bunch of, I don't have information for you. But at least it gives you a little more context. And then also I did want to say, I really appreciate the historical information that you bring to the table on this topic because it's really important. We will convey that back to the consultants and also just ask them, why wasn't Great Central Lake specifically looked at? I will assume, and it's I think pretty logical that the assessment will be the same as Sprout Lake, and it will be just the cost might take it off the table regardless, as Eddie had alluded to, but we'll follow up and get clarity from them on that one.
Thank you. Can I just add a little bit to the Truman Creek? I remember it too. And I know that there's a farm, or maybe more than one farm upstream in Truman Creek, that they removed the setbacks, or they removed all what would hold back turbidity from the creeks. And I actually watched myself, the cows going right into the creek and pooping. So that's not good. So I would like to go above it, just like the report talked about. But anyways, Pam and then Christy.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Gord and Harold, for your historical. I remember all those issues clearly. I just want to bring, I don't know if I could hear everything said, but one thing I'm considering is recommending that we really do take a look at a regional water plan that specifically includes all our water throughout the valley. And I'm hoping that the board of directors will consider that in the future and be a leader in bringing that forward. Thank you.
Thanks. Christy?
I wanted to say thank you to Gordon Harold. I really appreciate historical knowledge. And so I have, I really would think that the folks doing this type of information, this used to be a type of business that my husband and I had years ago, doing emergency planning and going into communities and, not just you got to look at the knowledge that has been there for many, many years, especially when we're dealing with stuff like this. And so, interviews by the people doing the assessments with people who have lived for many, many years on the land, I think would be an essential piece. The second piece about looking at Great Central, it may be a non-starter, but I think that the residents of Beaver Creek do expect information on it so that we are making an informed and educated decision. It may be cost prohibitive, but not looking at Great Central, I think is a bigger issue. It needs to be put in there in the same way that Sprout Lake is possibly cost prohibitive. And I want to echo what Pam is saying. As a new member, it baffles me that we don't have a regional plan here at this point. It's definitely something that also needs to be taken into consideration. One is us heading our own direction, but the other one is why aren't we? We have some incredible lakes here, massive resource, and it just as a I've been here for 4 years. I find it quite surprising that that's not actually how this whole system works. So I think we're just cobbling stuff together from past, and we need to have a decent forward look at where we're going. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny?
Very timely conversation and comments from the committee. We really appreciate that. So at yesterday's board meeting, this has been an ongoing topic is about regional water. And so it was brought up again and the discussion of a water committee, a regional water committee. And so it was decided that the committee of the whole will this year tackle water specific issues. So that is going to start to be talked about at a board level. And we'll convey that this committee is strongly supportive of that. So we really appreciate that.
And, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off what Jenny said, we talk about a regional Alberni-wide water supply. And we have up on our website a study that was done in 2010, just on that, identifying the costs and what a regional Alberni Valley-wide water system and study would look like. When we talk about this report, and Christy, I really appreciate your comments about, getting into the community and asking those questions. When we talk about these two studies, these were the high level feasibility that we're really looking to say, is it worth getting to that next level to have those conversations and the costs involved with those next level of conversations? We had put aside $50,000 in the budget for this initial study, which is a feasibility study. So feasibility, we're looking at, okay, is this feasible? When we get to the next and choose a source, we'll really drill into the details of that and what that would look like at that point.
Thank you. And it could also be that we could design a system that could eventually be part of a regional water system too. Harold? Or sorry, Gord?
Question. Does the regional district of Nanaimo have a water license on Great Central Lake?
I think so.
Well, I've seen years ago, I've seen their vehicles up in that area. So, and I heard that they did have a water license on Great Central Lake. So whether they were checking the quality or what, I don't know. And it'd be nice to know whether you think they do?
I think I heard from someone, and it's just heard, that they are in the mix with the dam. So that might be why you see the vehicles out there.
We do not know. We will get that information for you.
There's one more thing that I think that I'd like to consider, and it's Cherry Creek. And just to be thoughtful that they might eventually, I don't know, we could provide a backup supply to them, or they might eventually be something, the beginning of a regional water system if they became regional, or however it could work. But that might be the start, is Beaver Creek and Cherry Creek joining forces in some way and starting that regional idea.
Yeah, another great point. I think that we're at the point though where these are the good time to have these conversations. What we want to identify is what is the actual cost if Beaver Creek is treating its own water to build the water treatment plant, to purchase the land necessary to build a water treatment plant to treat the water. What are the ongoing capital costs? Because there are new limitations on what you have to put aside within capital for future replacement whenever you build something. What's the ongoing operations and maintenance? What type of treatment plant level would it be? What type of level operator would we need to either train our current staff up to or bring in? It's all part, we need to identify these costs and a ballpark idea of what they'd be before we can really determine, okay, what's the best route for Beaver Creek and for the valley as a whole. When we think about it, when we think about water and the importance of water, it shouldn't be a siloed approach. It shouldn't be a siloed conversation.
Okay. Anyone else would like to speak to anything? So we're all good. Yeah, we can go on and on and on.
We do.
Okay, so we can, is there any late business? I just have one really quick question before we go here. Do you do any watershed, any work in the watershed or speaking with Island, whoever owns it now, Mosaic or?
I personally don't, but we do as an organization. Amy Needham, who's our I forget her exact title, but Amy Needham, we've been having conversations and she sits on a committee talking with the watersheds and whatnot. And she's doing an agricultural water supply study, which is somewhat similar. So I think when we talk about the conversations that we'll be having at the committee of a whole level about water, those are the conversations we talk about the watershed and all the parties involved.
Okay, thank you. I know whenever I sat on the improvement district, at the time it was Island Timberlands had a committee and we were part of it. And so was the city of Port Alberni, and we used to meet once a month and go over their logging plans, and it was really worthwhile anyways. It worked out well.
I do think those committees exist and I do think they have them. And I've talked with Amy a little bit in a high level, but I can kind of dig into the details a little bit more with her and what they actually meet and when and what they discuss.
Thank you. Okay, so is there no late business? Question period?
Yeah, so there's no questions received by email. There's nobody in the audience and no questions on Zoom.
Okay, so a motion to adjourn? We got one. Seconder? All in favor, I guess. Thank you. We're all good.